Webster defines discernment. Webster defines it as it means a power to see what is not seen by the average mind. A power to see what is not seen by the average mind. And you think about people who have discernment, especially the ability to have positive discernment, what a great attribute that is. What a great attribute it's been in my life personally to have Jamie, because I'm going to tell you, I never make a major decision unless I go to Ms. Positivity. I need that feedback. In my strengths, it's down there about 6 or 7, so I can dip down and get it, but it's all on the surface right here. And so I rely upon her, and I think as a church, the more we begin to learn to recognize that trait in people, the more we look for the positivity and surround ourselves with those people, the better off we are. So that's a contribution that Barnabas made by giving us Paul. And think about your New Testament. Think about Christian theology. Where would we have been if we'd have just kept Saul pushed down and just a minor preacher, and it would have been a sect of Judaism? Paul expanded Christianity to what it is. Another person that was in Barnabas' life was John Mark. Now, you may not know all about John Mark, but John Mark was a cousin of Barnabas who had been on preaching journeys with Paul and with Barnabas, and they went in the mission field, and one time, John Mark, being a young preacher boy, got homesick and had to go home. So when they get ready to go on the second missionary journey, Paul says, I don't want him with us. If he's going to turn his back on the mission field, I don't want him to go with us. Barnabas said, no, there's something about this guy. There's something about this John Mark. There's something unique. There's some unique gift that he's going to give to Christianity. I'm going to go with him. You go with Silas. And so they split up. Now, it was that John Mark who later became the gospel writer of Mark. So it was Barnabas who saw who John Mark was. He saw the ability to actually be a great influence in the church. Another thing that happens is you actually see the billing change. Dr. Luke, as he's writing the book of Luke, up through chapter 14, he's talking about Barnabas and Saul, and then in chapter 14 he says the billing changes from Paul and Barnabas. So there's a subtle change that occurs, but just think about that. In business, we call that situational leadership. We say, it's the ability to actually train someone and get them trained till you can step back, and in this case, the student becomes greater than the teacher. And Barnabas was the one who saw that. If you look at discernment, as far as what Barnabas had, it's a spiritual gift. It's listed at 1 Corinthians. And I was in seminary with a gentleman by the name of Glenn. And Glenn was a literalist. Glenn believed everything literally true in the Bible, so he had trouble with seminary. He was the type, if the Bible said go to your closet and pray, when we'd get ready to go to Seminary Village and get him, we'd sometimes have to go and pull him out of the closet because he was in there praying, and that was Glenn. Also, when they were talking about textual criticism or something just a little bit off in seminary, Glenn would raise his hands and close his eyes, and we'd always look for that. Because what he was doing, he was discerning the spirits, but he always discerned for the negative. He always looked for the bad. I never saw him discern for a good or what was going on was great. He always looked for the bad, and sometimes that's what we do. Sometimes, I've said it to the men's group, so excuse me before, but we have barbecued preacher for Sunday lunch. We're critical of what's happened in the church. We haven't looked for what the good is. You like that, Laurie, barbecued preacher? We go home and we dissect everything. Oh, this wasn't good, this was too long, this was bad, the music wasn't good. And what are we doing? What are we doing? Because if we came to church with a positive expectation that I'm going to see Jesus today, I'm going to allow the Holy Spirit to work in this church, I'm going to be part of that movement, that no matter what goes on, I think you'd be amazing what was happening. Secondly, Barnabas was a great mentor. He knew how to take John Mark under his wing. He knew how to take Saul under his wing. He knew how to guide them along. And we have this in our church today. It's called the Confirmand program. If you've ever been involved in the Confirmand program, and I'm looking at several who have, You know what we do. We take a young person, we walk them through the process of what it is to become a church member, and it's a great experience, and you both gain. Usually the mentor and the mentee both equally gain. I know I've done it once, and it was such a rewarding experience. Now, did I always have the positive aspect of Miss Positivity over there? No, sometimes it was a chore, sometimes it was a burden, but I'll tell you what, when I look back over those months, that was a blessing to me. And I'm sure that Paul has been touched in his life in some way, but it was just a blessing to me. We do the same thing in business. We have mentors. It's very important that we assign mentors and actually get them started the right way. The final thing I wanted to touch on was Barnabas and humility. If you look at the change that happened from chapter 13 to 14, Barnabas is actually taking a back step. He's moving back from the limelight. He's stepping back from the spotlight. He's saying, I see someone who has a greater ability than me to proclaim the gospel. That is hard to do. That is a hard thing in business. It's a hard thing in church. It's a hard thing to recognize the great ability, but that's what we should be about as Christians. That's what we should be about, is getting the next generation ready to be much greater than what we've ever done. If the church is to grow, we have to recognize that and actually help them grow, to help them become the people they should, and step back. And talking about humility, I'm going to make another business reference here. If you ever had the chance, you should read two books. It's Built to Last and Good to Great, written by Jim Collins. I see some shaking of heads. Some people have read these books. And when he did his research for Good to Great, he was looking at what made good companies that perform pretty well become great companies consistently year after year. And he did a lot of research with hundreds of companies, and they found something very amazing. They found that CEOs of these good to great companies had one trait that was in common, and that was humility. They didn't talk about me, they didn't talk about I. They always used we terms. They were self-effacing. They were sometimes perceived as shy, and they didn't always want to be in the limelight. They learned how to get other people into the limelight and learned how to get the best out of them. And that shocks us, but that should also tell us in our churches that a lot of times you're going to have to find Barnabas. You're going to have to hunt Barnabas out. Not going to always be a parent. It's going to be sometimes it's a quiet person that in great controversy, they're the quiet person. They're not always a vocal one. They're the ones that when you get them alone, you get them by themselves, you will learn a lot. And I've seen that in several people in this church, that when I got them alone and I listened to the wisdom, I could see Barnabas, I could hear it, and I could feel it. So where does that leave us? What do we draw from all of this? First of all, don't let the magnitude of a problem cloud your vision. I know in my personal life, things have come along that if I just thought about it too much, it would overwhelm me. The best thing to do is sort of step back from it. That's what the church at Jerusalem did. They had a real issue they were facing, and they just drew back from it. Our church went through open and affirming, and we had a really good leadership all through it, that people just step back and say, okay, what's this really all about? Where is God leading us? And I think we went through that, and we all gained experience, and I think it teaches us something for the future. And again, I mentioned Barnabas isn't always easy to recognize. Sometimes we have to look for Barnabas, and sometimes we have to surround ourselves, and sometimes you have to rely upon Barnabas. Just like in my personal life, I have to have Ms. Positivity help me out from time to time, because I can get on the gloomy side of things and not really realize what's going on. The final point is to be sure to demonstrate positivity yourself. Always try and look on the brighter side of whatever situation you're in. And I'm going to close with an old hymn that's a gospel hymn. And if you ever saw "O Brother, Where Art Thou?" or listen to the music, I know the choir, some of them know what I'm talking about. There's a song, it's called "Keep on the Sunny Side of Life." And I'll just give you the first verse and the chorus, but I'm not going to sing it. God didn't bless me with musical talent. He only gave that out to one side of the family. So if you want a VCR worked on, I can do that. I can work on a car. But if you want a song, don't come to me because I can't sing it. But here's how it goes. There's a dark and a troubled side of life. There's a bright, there's a sunny side too. Though we meet with the darkness and strife, the sunny side we may also view. And the chorus goes, keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side, keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day. It will brighten all the way if we'll keep on the sunny side of life. My prayer is today that I could always keep that in mind. My prayer is today that I could be more like Barnabas, and if I can't be like Barnabas, that I know where Barnabas is and where to find him or her. Thanks be to God for this good news. Amen.